In the morning, the group is greeted by their new driver, Val A, and their much smaller carriage. Val explains that Orson and his guards have gone to another contract, and she will be escorting the group further toward Bugido. The group load the comatose Gus into the travel compartment underneath the carriage, and Jack, Thok, Kator, and Tilly sit inside as Val expertly drives her 2 horses and short carriage toward the next town. Several hours later, as the sun reaches its zenith, the group hear a rumbling and a chittering. Kator, Tilly, and Thok draw their weapons nervously as Jack calmly sits with his eyes closed. The rumbling stops, and there is a thunk on top of the carriage. Val immediately swerves to the side and stops. A thud signals the group where to direct their attention. As the 3 charge out of the carriage and begin attacking the beast, they see it is a monster with a vulture head, beetle body, and giant hooks for forearms. Arrow after arrow shatters against the chitin armor, swing after swing, Thok chips away pieces of its shell before finally landing a blow on its shin, cutting deep and forcing it to go down. It lashes out, scraping and slashing with its hooks, hoping to bring down the half-orc, but it is interrupted when bolts of arcane magic fly from the carriage door and penetrate its skin beneath the cracks in its shell. The beast squawks and squeals and begins to look for an escape, but finds none, as Tilly and Thok surround it and Kator unleashes more arrows, more arcane blasts, and a crushing backhanded blow by Thok to its good ankle. It tries to stand, but the ankle snaps and splinters. As tears well up in its eyes, it begins to drag itself away. Thok and Tilly take a step back. It is no longer a threat. Kator, however, will not suffer a monster to live. He shoots another arrow, piercing the back of its skull and killing it instantly. He grabs what arrows were not shattered from the dirt road and then begins carving up the beast. Some string, some coins, and a live rabbit come out of its stomach when Kator cuts it open and spills its contents onto the side of the road. Thok suggests those hooks might be able to be crafted into weapons. Kator, having never seen a creature like this before, agrees to take them to the next town to have an expert look at them. He severs them at the elbow joint and packs them into his backpack. The remainder of their trip passes quietly, and they arrive in Bugido shortly after dusk. A local directs them to the Screaming Knee Inn, where they meet the namesake of the place and hear the otherworldly screams coming from his knee. It interrupts their conversation several times, but the group agrees to buy rooms for the night, using Tilly's bank paper to cover the cost. Tilly and Val are given 1 room, Thok and Kator take another, and Jack decides to set up a tent around a park bench by the carriage. Before heading to bed, Kator asks the innkeeper about the hooked beast and finds out that they are common in this area and their meat is boiled and eaten like lobster. The innkeeper buys the 2 hooks for a small amount, and Kator returns to find Thok has gone to the other room. Meanwhile, Tilly and Thok had each noticed a creepy glass doll dressed in linen clothing, perched on a shelf and staring at them. Tilly turned hers around to face the wall. Thok tossed his into the chamber pot before heading to Tilly's room. Kator didn't notice the doll in the chamber pot before he began emptying the Gus residue from the past few days into it. Blood and scat and putrid chunky liquids poured into the chamber pot, covering the doll. Once his pack was clean, he put his belongings and the party's coins back inside and went to sleep. Thok slept on the floor while Tilly and Val shared the bed, but when Thok awoke, he was on his back, with a shit-covered glass doll sitting on his chest, staring at him. Thok grabbed the doll, jumped up, and launched it through the window, shattering the glass and unknowingly damaging Jack's tent and waking up the wizard in the process. At the sound, everyone gets up, and both the innkeeper and Kator join the group in Tilly's room. Tilly agrees to pay for the window, Thok apologizes, and then they both notice the other doll on the shelf, staring at them, not the wall. Before they can inquire, Jack bursts through the door holding a dripping doll, demanding to know who threw it at him. The group remains silent, but the innkeeper says,
"That's my doll, what happened to it? You better pay to get it cleaned."
Tilly says,
"Oh, don't worry about that, I can fix it."
And she casts a spell, evaporating all the muck and leaving behind a fresh, clean scent. Jack casts mending on the window and takes a gold coin from Tilly that she was going to pay to have it replaced.
No harm, no foul, I suppose,"
says the innkeeper before grabbing the dollar and going to the other room to place it back on the shelf. Jack approaches his tent just in time for it to collapse at his feet. Tilly goes into Magic Mike's shop, followed by Kator as Jack gathers up his things. To the group's amazement, Magic Mike had several magical items for stealth and archery.
Boots of elf,
He said.
Elf? What kind of enchantment is that? And please don't say something racist.
Replies Kator. Jack walks in and takes a look at the boots.
Yes, boots of elf or elven kind. That's what these are.
Okay, but what does that mean exactly?
Begs Kator.
Stealthy, quiet, silent. I'm not sure exactly why they call it elven kind, but it has always been called that since before my time anyway.
Answers Jack.
the cloak, boots, and gloves for Tilly, and the bracers for Kator. Let's see, that'll be 1,462 gold.
Says Mike. Kator and Tilly try to barter and negotiate a lower price, but it is clear they cannot afford everything. Just when they are about to abandon one or two of the items, Magic Mike speaks up.
You know there are a few troublesome monster dens in the north. If you were to pay 300 gold now and go clear out a few places and bring back proof, we could call it even for the equipment.
Yes, of course, I never turned down an opportunity to hunt.
Says Kator.
Excellent. There's a den of hook horrors, damn beetle vulture-looking things up there, a small encampment of ogres, and a cave that I heard has a bag of holding inside.
Says Magic Mike.
Here, we can use this map of the province that I bought in Thophido. It includes the area north of Bugido, although I don't see an ogre encampment, a hook horror den, or a cave on the map. Maybe we'll find them once we get there.
Says Jack. Kator leads the group to the one landmark on the map that is north of Bugido, a large tree growing in the swamp, with a gnome-sized house built underneath the tall roots. Tilly crouches down and knocks on the door. A halfling answers with,
"Be there, who is?"
The group introduce themselves to Silanif and learn his name, and then he offers to let them stay in his house for the night. It is a bit cramped, and there is a dark hole at the back of the house that has light at the bottom, but the group go to sleep anyway. In the morning, the group decide to explore down the hole, and Silanif goes with them. At the bottom, there are torches and carved stone. There are 3 tunnels and a small pillar partially blocking the eastern tunnel. The group go west, proceeding through several rooms, getting ambushed by goblins until they get to the southern edge of the dungeon. Throughout the encounters, the group sees Silanifi fight with his fists and his glowing green sword. Cloaked figures, vaguely humanoid but surrounded in shadow, attack the group in the next room to the east. Jack runs ahead of the group into the midst of the shadow monsters and shouts,
Foos! Row! Da!
and casts Thunderwave, killing them all instantly.
That was impressive, Jack. I didn't know you could do that.
Says Kator.
It was a spell from Bin's book. I paid every coin I had to get the gold ink to copy it into my spell book in Thophidos.
Explains Jack. When the group turn north to continue along their path, they see a giant wolf spider, a few goblins. After the fight, Kator attempts to harvest a venom sac from the spider, but it pops and spills on the floor. In the next room, they see scrawled on the wall is the message,
They ate Gida.
and they proceed cautiously to the next room. A large pillar partially obscures the entrance to a tunnel, and the other side of the room has a wall of webs leading to daylight and the swamp. They burn the webs and sneak around the pillar to see more goblins and another goblin boss. This room is not lit, and the goblins don't seem to notice, and the group ambushes them, killing all but the goblin boss before they can react. Several quick punches later, the goblin boss falls and blood pours from his corpse. Once the group lights a torch, they find more writing on the walls.
When the sun is eclipsed in the shield and the gate of mist is opened, the ring of madness shall be found.
Faint screaming can be heard from the wall, but no one could find any hidden buttons or entrances, and the other side of the wall was the swamp outside, so they left it. The next room is empty, except for another wall message says,
Beware the light.
The group examine the large pillar for a long time. Kator gets bored and goes to check the previous rooms for hidden doors. On Kator's walk, he triggers a trap scythe in the wall, gets sliced, and then disarms the reset trap. After an hour, Jack gets the idea to check the goblin boss for information about the pillar. He finds a note that says,
Grog hid shiny in pillar. Button on back opens.
Then Jack calmly walks around the pillar until he finds a large, obvious button and presses it. Tilly was still trying to find a locking mechanism with her tools, and Thok was still trying to pry open a crack in the stone with a crowbar. Then the panels opened up, revealing a chest. Hundreds of copper and silver coins, 2 magical shields, 2 magical raven figurines, and some cloth clothes with jewels inlaid in them. Thok takes a look at the chest, then looks at his empty backpack, then back at the chest. He grabs a length of rope from Jack and rigs a harness with shoulder straps. He puts his empty backpack into the chest and ties the harness over the chest and wears it as a backpack itself. Kator returns and brags about the trap disarmed to Tilly, who congratulates him as if he were a child learning to tie his shoes. Thok sees how close Kator is to being overburdened and offers to hold the party gold from now on. Kator walks around, opens the chest on Thok's back, sees the massive pile of coins and tosses in the rest of the party wealth and closes the chest. The group decide to go back and check out the other 2 tunnels near the first entrance, but on the way, they get ambushed by 3 giant swarms of insects. The bugs attack Jack's magical armor bubble, as well as Tilly and Kator. Thok tries to squish a swarm between himself and the stone floor. Tilly, Silenif, and Kator bring out lit torches to fight against the swarms. Before Kator can swing, the swarm goes in for a second attack and knocks him out. Jack blasts more spells, and 1 swarm disperses, but the other 2 continue the attack. A few more hits from the torches, and another swarm of bugs die. Kator is bleeding out as the group finishes off the last swarm. Jack takes out one of the 24 nutmeg-laced health potions and pours it down Kator's throat. Kator wakes and casts Cure Wounds on himself.
Those bugs hit harder than a falling tree. Let's quickly search the last 2 tunnels and get out of here.
In the next room, the group hear a patrol of goblins approaching, and they hide around the corner trying to ambush them. Jack pulls out a glass jar and throws it to shatter on the far side of the room. The patrol hears this and run toward the noise. When they get there, they sniff the air, then start eating the contents on the floor. One drops dead instantly, another eats for a few seconds before falling over, bleeding from the eyes and ears. Another eats for a bit longer before vomiting up blood and dying. The last coughs blood and starts to run away. Kator shoots an arrow into the base of the goblin's skull, and it falls forward, sliding a few feet.
What was in that jar?
Asks Tilly.
Orson's sock, the rest of the rotten fish, the sample of poisonous mushroom from below Taylor's house, and plenty of sugar and water. I don't think I'll be able to make another.
The group continue on, find the first entrance, look in the north tunnel to find it is a dead end, and then go to the east tunnel. Glowing runes on the walls and a strange smell surprise the group. Then they hear a wailing ghost. Tilly finds some torn papers and tries to piece them back together. It appears to be a love letter and suicide note.
Dearest Betty, you were the love of my life. The days we'd spend on the farm were the best days of my life. Then Farmer Brown came. I pleaded with him. I begged him. But he killed you. The love is gone from my life now, and I leave behind this mortal coil. Your lover, Clara.
Suddenly the ghostly wail quiets, and the ghost Clara appears.
It was horrible. He took her away and slaughtered her. I'll never forget her beautiful ears, her black and white spots. She was too good for this world. He ate her, that bastard.
I vow to avenge Betty and punish Farmer Brown for you,
says Selenifi.
Spots. Clara, did Betty by chance perhaps have udders?
Yes, she always loved when I caressed them. I was much gentler than Farmer Brown,
says Clara.
Ah, I get it. Betty was a cow.
Kator exclaims very bluntly.
I'll kill you for insulting her memory,
Screams Clara as she attacks the entire group. Her wails and screams brought most of the group to their knees in pain before they can draw their weapons. The group fights for barely a few seconds before Silenifi begs for mercy. He casts friends and says,
I have vowed to avenge Betty. Punished Farmer Brown will be. Forgive my companion, he knows not of what he speaks. Go now and rest in peace.
Clara screams one last time, and Jack appears to age 40 years in an instant. Then she dives into the floor, and the room is silent. The group quickly rush back to the rope, tie Jack to the bottom of it, climb up, pull him up, and make their way back to Bugido. Silenif explains that he has seen this magic before, and if they don't reverse it within a day, it will be permanent. Jack asks for some prune juice and says Magic Mike has some healing ability. They get back to town within 6 hours, dusk has already fallen and Magic Mike's shop is closed, but they can hear movement inside. They knock and get him to answer. When he does, he sees Jack and invites him in for some applesauce and to compare bunions. Kator frantically explains that Jack was aged by magic and needs to be healed. Mike says he'll perform the healing for the cost of materials, 100 gold. Thok turns around and Kator takes 100 gold coins out of the chest backpack and hands them to Magic Mike. Magic Mike brings Jack inside, slams the door and drops the gold coins on the floor as he fetches a sack of diamond dust necessary for the spell. Jack scoops up the gold coins and begins putting them into tiny bags of 10 gold each and placing them on the counter. Mike casts the spell and Jack reverts to his regular age, extremely bewildered and confused. He finds himself holding applesauce in one hand and the last 10 gold in the other. He put the gold with the rest and sits down to eat his applesauce. Magic Mike makes tea and the two chat for several hours as the group wait outside.
How long does a reverse aging healing take?
Is he going to finish before the deadline?
What if Jack is stuck like this forever?
They ask each other nervously as they wait in the moonlight. When the door finally opens and a young Jack walks out, they sigh in relief and head to the carriage to set up their bedrolls. In the morning, the group go back to Magic Mike to get more information about the 3 dungeons nearby that he said would have a bag of holding in them. They show him Silenif's hut on the map and say the bag was not in that dungeon. Magic Mike points out the other 2 dungeons, one north and one west of Silenif's house. They walk by the carriage and see the undercarriage compartment where he had been sleeping. The past few days is empty and there's no sign of the gnome. In the marketplace, Jack sits down with the magical shields and raven figurines they found in the last dungeon, trying to figure out what the enchantments are. Before the ritual can be completed, the group notice the marketplace has become empty other than them, and a group of armed men are approaching.
You've been dealing in things that you ought to avoid.
The largest man shouts as they charge toward the group with weapons drawn. Kator and Tilly shoot the leader in the chest before he reaches them, but it doesn't slow him down. He cuts a line across Tilly's midriff as she jumps backwards to dodge. The other 2 attack Kator, one misses and the other cuts Kator's leg. Thok and Silenif try to help Kator as Jack loses concentration on the ritual spell and enters combat by enhancing his running ability. Kator's next arrow makes the leader stagger, and before he can recover, Tilly's arrow goes right through his neck vertebrae. His head falls back and the muscles and skin tear open under the weight. As his head hits the ground and his body falls to its knees, the other 2 men try to run away. Thok tackles one in the marketplace, while Jack and Silenifi chase down the other on the street. Tilly interrogates the one Thok tackled, learning that they were paid by a loud dwarf in Thofido. Jack uses a wand blast to break the knee of the fleeing man. As Silenifi and Jack hold him down and question him, Kator loots the body of the leader, finding a note and some coins. The note has a description of each of the party members except Silenife, as well as instructions to find them, beat them, capture them alive, and bring them back to Thofido. The bottom of the letter is signed with the symbol of the blood god, the same symbol Lorgar had on his hammer. Jack heals the injured man with a nutmeg health potion and tells him not to get involved in fights anymore. Kator shows the note to the rest of the group, and they decide to quickly finish shopping and leave town. A villager approaches them midway through their shopping trip after hearing them discuss leaving town.
You adventurers are always starting fights in the middle of town. We don't mind, as long as you aren't hurting innocent people. But really, you should clean up after yourselves. Nobody wants to go into work and be told they have to clean up a dead body from the middle of the marketplace.
I'm sorry, please, take this gold piece as a donation to the Women's Association of Bugido,
says Tilly. Kator and Thok go to a magic shop and find the raven figurines are enchanted with messenger ravens. They also trade the enchanted shields for a pearl that can regenerate spell slots that Kator and Jack want to share. Thok and Kator also trade a bunch of their miscellaneous loot for a jug of endless liquid, which Thok keeps for himself. Tilly and Silenev buy a large supply of health potions from Eric von Derek the cleric, and also steal a few potions from the shelves of the shop while Eric is in the back room. Silenifi accidentally reveals this to Eric, and Tilly throws up her arms and declares,
search me.
Eric stumbles and plants his face in between her breasts. Tilly squishes them to the sides of his head and asks,
Convinced yet?
Eric's words are muffled by the leather and flesh, and he pulls away, his face red.
Yes, it looks like you don't have any stolen goods in there. Come back again if you need more potions.
When they leave the shop, Tilly takes Silenif, and they have a short discussion about thievery and how he hadn't met any thieves in the temple, in the Shadow Realm, or in the swamp. Tilly ends the conversation with,
Just don't interfere with my thieving, and we won't have any problems.
When the group meet up, they rearrange their inventory and coins, then head north to Silenif's house. They get there without incident and eat a nice meal before heading to sleep. In the morning, they head west and find a black stone building with the front door smashed in and large humanoid tracks leading inside. They remember that Magic Mike had mentioned ogres and proceed with caution inside. In the first room, a spectre turns to attack, but Jack unleashes several blasts from his wand of magic missile, leaving nothing but smoke where the spectre had been. After a bit of a winding hallway, the group find what looks like a lord's feast room, with tables and chairs strewn over the group. 2 stone gargoyles and a tree growing through the room and above the roof. They can tell by the moss on the furniture that this room has not been in use for many years. As they search the room, Tilly sees one of the gargoyles twitch and shouts. Kaitor marks his target as Silenif charges in and punches the rock-like skin of the beast. Kaitor's arrow flies into one of the first-shaped craters and splits the stone. As the stone splits in half and shatters on the ground, Kaitor switches to target the stationary gargoyle. Thok relaxes and sheathes his weapon. Tilly tries to push over the other gargoyle, but isn't strong enough. Kaitor sheathes his bow, takes out his short sword, and pokes the gargoyle in the eye. When there is no reaction, he releases his hunter's mark and says,
Guys, I think this one might be just a statue.
Tilly climbs the tree to take a look around as Kaitor and Thok explore the southeast hallway. They find and open a door, revealing a small sleeping ogre, only about 8 feet tall. They go back and get Jack, Tilly, and Silenifi, with the intent to talk to the creature, but fight if necessary. Jack walks up to the ogre, just out of arm's reach, and loudly says,
Hey, wake up.
The ogre grunts and swings his arm, the wind making Jack's hat move slightly. Tilly takes a look inside and sees something shiny underneath the bedding that the ogre has laid out. The group get into battle positions in case the ogre wakes up, as Tilly and Thok carefully pull out what was under the bedding. It was an iron chest, and the group quietly take it back through the hallway before opening it. Inside, they find a bag of holding and a few other items. They spend the next several minutes loading the group coins, loot, and spare weapons into the bag of holding. The group looks around a few more tunnels, breaking down wooden doors by accident as they find themselves stronger than they were when they arrived. Goblins and goblin bosses begin fleeing from them, but they offer no mercy. One goblin takes an arrow in the throat from Tilly's bow and gets launched across the room and pinned against the wall, with his legs dangling inches above the ground. Tilly looks revolted by the unexpected result, and the group quiets for a moment. Thok and Kaitor quietly search the bodies. Silenifi, Tilly, and Jack start talking about how it might not have been necessary to kill those goblins.
Not much of a challenge or danger, is it?
Says Jack.
We could go back and kill that ogre if you want.
Replies Thok.
He didn't seem evil, though.
Says Tilly.
We got the bag we were looking for. Let's leave the rest of this for future adventurers.
Says Silenifi. Kaitor drops a few coins from the goblins into the bag of holding and walks out of the room without saying a word. The group catch up to him by the gargoyle statue, and they ask him,
Were you keeping track of which way is out?
The north door on the east side of this room, then it is a winding tunnel, with no side entrances all the way to the swamp. Let's go.
Kaitor replies as he begins leading the way. They head back to Silenif's hut through the swamp, but before they get halfway, they see some tall mushrooms with tendrils. They find a skeletal arm near the edge of the group of foot-tall mushrooms, and it looks like the area they cover is a body. Jack wants to get a sample, but Tilly thinks it is too dangerous. Kaitor gets the group to back up, fearing poisonous spores, and shoots one of the mushrooms. The tendrils flail about and spatter some liquid over the ground, and the main mushroom gushes some thicker, darker liquid. Jack insists on attempting a sample. He sets up an open jar and ties a fork to a walking stick. He stabs one of the mushrooms with the fork and lifts it off the ground. The root system is a lot larger than the mushroom itself, and he tries to smack it on the ground a few times to break off a chunk that will fit in the jar. The tendrils flail wildly, and the mushroom sprays liquid in all directions. As the walking stick begins to sag, Jack wipes the fork on the ground to remove the mushroom. It uses its root systems act as legs to move it back to the skeletal corpse, and it plants itself where it was. Jack tosses the bending walking stick towards the corpse and takes his empty jar. Tendrils from several of the mushrooms spray the walking stick and pull it towards themselves. It seems to decay and rot within seconds under their grip. The group sleep at Silanif's hut and make their way back to Bugido the next afternoon. Tilly is eager to find a place to sleep that doesn't include a phantom screaming body part, and leads the group to a different inn. A male dwarf greets her from behind the counter and calls the matron of the establishment, a high elf with light blue hair named Marge. Tilly buys several bottles of elvish wine using her banknote, and Silanif becomes confused. The argument ends with a punch, and the dwarf jumps up on the counter and shouts,
"Fight!" "No, we're not fighting. Calm down,"
says Tilly.
"Fight!"
He shouts again,
If you want to fight, go ahead.
says Thok. The dwarf jumps from the counter towards the group, but Marge casts sleep on him, and he falls flat and begins snoring. Marge calmly says he'll be okay and directs the group toward the bathhouse. Kator and Thok instead go off to Rosie's garden, a local apothecary and alchemy shop. The others arrive at the bathhouse and pay to go inside. Tilly strips down in the female changing room, leaving her dirty armor and clothes there. Silanif walks right up to the edge of the bath and strips down, leaving his stuff in a pile within splashing distance of the water. Jack goes into the male changing room and is greeted unexpectedly by a naked Gus standing on the bench and stretching. Jack rushes past and into the pool area, sees Silanif's clothes getting splashed, and doesn't see anywhere dry to put his own clothes. He goes back into the changing room, only to be greeted by Gus's butthole in the air. Jack strips as quickly as he can, trying to forget what he just saw, and he stumbles out into the bath. Silanif plays with a bar of soap, saying quack unconvincingly. The trio finish cleaning themselves and ask if there is a place here where they can clean their clothes. An attendant points over to a bin and washboard by the sauna, and Jack takes his things over there. Tilly instead uses prestidigitation to clean her and Silanif's clothes. As Jack walks past the sauna, he sees Magic Mike and Gus sitting naked, legs spread, and telling stories about bunions to each other. Jack is so disturbed by the repeat sightings of Gus that he puts on his clean, wet clothes and goes for a run up and down the street. He casts Expeditious Retreat to make himself faster and attempts to air dry his clothes. He dodges through the crowd at unnatural speeds, causing the townsfolk to stare and get annoyed as he barely avoids knocking them over. He begins to chafe and sweat and runs back into the bathhouse. Sullenly, he asks Tilly to clean his clothes and gets back into the water. Meanwhile, at Rosie's garden, Kator tries to sell the human fat candles, Nothic claws, and several other body parts from evil creatures that the group had killed. Rosie seems very offended and accuses Kator of being racist against spider people and Nothics.
It was trying to kill me. These very claws slashed at my armor and cut me. None of these things ever tried to talk, or run, or surrender.
Yeah, but did they hear you killing other things? Were they defending themselves?
No, most of these ambushed me and my friends as we were just walking around.
Well, maybe you were trespassing. Let me guess. You were in a dungeon, right? Where do you think spider people live?
If they are civilized, then why don't they live in houses, huts, villages, or towns?
Maybe because people like you would kill them if they tried. No alchemist has any use for body parts from sentient beings. Maybe you should try a necromancer.
Rosie shouts and walks out the door. Kator looks around, stunned. He sees a dog and feeds one of the severed pincers to it and pats its head, then leaves. Before he can close the door behind him, he hears the clanking of bottles and the barking of the dog.
Is that dog racist against half-orcs? Maybe that's why Rosie is so paranoid about people being racist.
Kator says to himself as he turns around and walks back inside.
Thok, why is the dog barking? Did you?
Kator stops as he sees Thok close the lid of his chest with potion bottles visible inside.
What are you doing? That is clearly a guard dog.
Kator shouts.
Don't worry about it.
He replies, as they hear movement and footsteps from the back room. The two leave quickly and Thok walks out of town. Kator stands there, stunned, then heads over to Mr. Rescue's alchemy shop. When he arrives, he opens the door to see Rosie there, ranting.
It was awful. They had chopped up innocent Nothics and kept their fingers as trophies. He even had human fat candles.
Hi, Mr. Rescue?
He asks hesitantly.
That's the guy.
Rosie exclaims.
Get out! I don't want any of your claws or fangs.
Mr. Rescue shouts to Kator.
What about human teeth? Can they be ground up and used for anything?
Get out!
Okay, maybe I'll come back tomorrow when you've calmed down. You wouldn't happen to know a necromancer, would you?
Get out!
They both shout, and Kator walks backwards and lets the door close. Just as the door closes, Kator hears some angry townsfolk talking about adventurers.
Thieves, all of them.
Murderers, too.
Don't forget they smash things, and don't pay for them.
They scare the children!
What makes them so great? We outnumber them. They can't take us all.
Let's kill them!
Kill the adventurers! Kill the adventurers! Kill the adventurers!
The crowd chants as they light torches and pick up pitchforks and other weapons. Kator ducks into a shadowed alley and hides as the massive crowd gathers and moves out. Over 1,000 townsfolk charge around, searching for adventurers to kill. Jack, Tilly, and Silenife hear the violent mob as Tilly finishes cleaning Jack's clothes. They quickly dry off and get dressed, then rush toward the carriage. Jack nearly gets overrun and briefly considers using Thunderwave, but then thinks better of it and casts Expeditious Retreat on himself again. Once the crowd is far enough away from Kator, he sneaks toward the carriage and calms the horses. He tries to find Valet, but she is nowhere to be seen. Then he sees Thok walking away from down in the distance on the road. He looks in the other direction and sees Jack, Tilly, and Silenife running toward him with the violent mob a few hundred feet behind them. He quickly grabs the reins and gets in the driver's seat. As the others get close, he begins walking the horses, shouting.
Get in, let's go.
The others jump in and he snaps the reins, causing the horses to rush into a run. He slows a bit as they get close to Thok.
Thok, jump in the carriage. It is not safe to stop.
He grabs onto the side as the horses speed up again, and makes his way inside while they speed away from town. The group continue to ride for a few hours. They see the townsfolk didn't chase them beyond the borders of the town, but they don't want to take any chances. Once the group can catch their breath, they try to figure out what just happened.
Tilly, did you do anything to piss off the villagers?
Asks Kator.
No, his wife knocked him out. It wasn't me.
Silenife, did you do anything to anger the townsfolk?
Know not of what you speak.
I'll take that as a maybe. Thok, I know you got caught stealing in broad daylight. Jack, what about you?
There's a blank in my memory for about 15 minutes. I remember coming back sweaty and running.
I'll take that as a yes. And I'm partially to blame also. I think I offended the alchemists with spider fangs and Nothic claws. And they seemed upset after I asked about necromancers, even though they brought it up first. Speaking of which, did you guys know that Nothics are considered sentient?
Sentient they are, yes, but evil too. Must kill, but harvest, should not.
Advises Silenife.
I wish you had been there when we killed it. Then you could have warned me. I thought it was a mindless beast like a mimic or a snake. I grew up in the forest. I would never skin an ogre or take the teeth of a goblin or the snout of a kobold. I can talk to those things. They wear clothes, they use weapons, and I can tell that they are intelligent. But a Nothic or that purple Spider-Man thing? How was I supposed to know they were sentient?
The lizard men, too. They actually tried to talk, but once Lorgar attacked, you all jumped into battle and then you skinned one of them.
Jack says.
What? Why didn't you say something? We made gloves out of that skin.
I didn't think it would make a difference.
Jack answers calmly.
What kind of evil monster do you think I am? I'd never knowingly wear the skin of a civilized person.
Kator shouts as he rips the gloves off his hands and throws them on the ground.
Next time, tell us when something is speaking and you can understand it. I'm just glad Lorgar is gone, so we have more of a chance to negotiate. But if you see me going to skin or harvest from something sentient, warn me about it.
Kator kneels by the discarded gloves, plants the human fat candles in a triangle around them, pours the human teeth onto the pile, and the claws, spider fangs, pincers, and other pieces of enemies from his backpack. Then he lights it all on fire and puts enough dry grass in the pile so it completely burns. The group discuss what they are going to do, and they send a messenger raven to Val A for her to meet them outside of town. While they are waiting for the raven to return, Thok examines the potions he stole and keeps them to himself. When the raven returns, Cater feeds it a few crumbs, and it turns back into a figurine, then kicks some dirt into the small fire to put it out. They wait a bit longer, then Cater gets a mental message from an older woman.
From Valet. Screw you guys, I'm taking your cut and staying here. You suck.
Cater spins around, looking for the source of the voice.
Guys, did you hear that?
Just birds,
says Selenifi.
No, it was an old woman saying Val A has taken our cut of something and won't be coming.
Sounds like the message spell to me,
says Jack.
I guess I'll drive from now on,
says Cator, and the group pile into the carriage. After a few hours, the horses stop because a dog-sized frog is in front of them. Cator tries to turn them to avoid the frog, but it lashes out and attacks one of the horses. Thok is the first to jump out of the carriage and chop off the frog's tongue. The group try to continue, but the horse that got attacked won't move unless it can see Cater. He uses Detect Poison and Disease, and finds that it is afflicted with the same poison from the frog temple. As he is calming the horse, more giant frogs attack from the swamp. Jack climbs to the top of the carriage and begins channeling Witch Bolt on one of the frogs, and it jumps up to attack him in return. Thok charges to defend the other horse. Silenifa joins him in close combat. Tilly and Cater begin showing arrows. Before long, all the giant frogs are dead. They find that no one has any cures for poison, so they walk the horses and carriage out of the swamp and find a place to camp for the night, hoping that the horse will recover on its own. In the grasslands, they see a dire goat, nearly 12 feet tall. Cater approaches with some food, but pauses when it stamps its hooves. He throws food a few feet in front of it, then tosses more halfway between them, and rolls some cabbage a few feet away from himself. The dire goat eagerly eats the turnips, cabbages, and carrots, but spits out the apples. By the time it gets to Cater, it seems much friendlier, and licks his face. The group make a basic harness out of mostly rope, and try to get the dire goat to lead the horses like a dog sled or reindeer sleigh, but the goat proves difficult to control. They don't make it far before settling down and letting the animals graze. Tilly takes first watch, and she sees other dire goats arrive and go to sleep near the horses. By the end of her watch, there is a massive herd of dire goats surrounding the horses, and a malnourished dog that appears to control the herd by barking. The barking wakes up Jack and Cater, and they join Tilly in watching the dire goats. Tilly takes some meat over to the dog and feeds it. Its collar is rotten leather, very old and chafing at its neck, so she removes it. The dog follows her back to camp, and some goats follow and start eating her bedroll. Tilly tries to shoo them off with no effect, but the dog barks and the goats retreat.
I'm going to call you Rando,
Tilly says to the dog as she gives him more meat rations. As everyone settles down to rest, Thok begins his watch. Soon, he sees a man in the distance. The man whistles and the goats get up and begin walking away. When Thok wakes Cater for watch duty, Cater asks why the goats are walking again, and Thok points him to the man. Cater rushes out to talk to the man, who appears gaunt and clothed in tatters. After a brief discussion, the man explains that a dire goat mated with his regular goat, and she began calving dire goats.
He keeps the herd away from the farms and towns, and he makes sure their population is under control. Cator almost suggests the man slaughter the herd and sell them for meat, but he sees the goodness in the man's eyes and decides otherwise. Instead, Cator forces a bag of gold into the man's hands and thanks the man for being a protector of the land.
If you ever need any help, just send word to the towns. They owe you more than they know.
Gold? A gift? I've got a gift for you then. Wait here,
says the man as he disappears into the herd of dire goats. He returns a few minutes later, leading the largest dire goat by a rope. It is the same one that Cator had fed earlier. The man smiles and hands the rope to Cator, then disappears behind an ocean of fur and hooves. Silenef takes the last watch, and Cator moves his bedroll to sleep near the horses and the dire goat. The next day, the group make their way to Tisidu, a small farming hamlet known for its carpenter. Tilly negotiates the trade of their current horses and carriage for an excessive amount of food, in addition to a customized huge carriage. The new carriage has a fold-away bed. It is tall enough to rein the dire goat. It has enough storage for over a month's rations for the dire goat, as well as spacious seating for the adventurers, padded seats, and a dog seat next to the driver. The group pass on through another few farming villages until they find a narrow section of the road lined by trees. They see a glare in front of them and stop the carriage. Upon closer inspection, there seems to be a transparent gelatinous wall in front of them with bones and armor floating in it. Just as Kator tries to back up the carriage and go around the small forest, the gelatinous cube reaches out and engulfs the dire goat. The group spring into action, blasting it with spells, shooting it with arrows, and pulling the goat free. Silenif gets splashed with the gelatin, and it begins burning away the hair on one of his arms. A final spell from Jack and the cube deflates and melts into the ground. Kator immediately heals the dire goat by casting Cure Wounds. Silenefer forgets for a moment that he is carrying potions and shouts,
"Yeah, thanks, I nearly lost an arm, but sure, you heal the goat."
You want me to heal you? I can if you want. I just thought you were going to use one of the potions in your pack.
Replies Kator, oblivious to the offense he continues to cause.
"I don't need your healing, let's just go,"
grumbles Silenif. That night, the group sleeps in and around their carriage. In the morning, they continue to travel east towards Rotidido, where they hope to finally meet Alec Azam. On the road, they encounter a pile of flesh with mouths and claws. They killed the gibbering mouther without issue, but briefly disturbed by the strange nature of the beast, they move on as quickly as they can. A few hours later, they see a golden chest on the side of the road and stop the carriage to investigate.
"If that is another mimic, then better to hit it at range,"
says Thok.
If it is real gold, an arrow would just bounce off harmlessly,
agrees Kator as the two draw their bows. As they and the others begin their attack, the golden mimic lashes out, but with no one in range. Once it is dead, they loot its body and are surprised to find a wooden chest inside it. Luckily, this chest is real and not a baby mimic. Inside the wooden chest are hundreds of copper and silver coins, making the group glad they have the bag of holding. After a few more hours of carriage ride, the group get their first view of Rotidido, a huge oceanside city with towering buildings and bustling streets. The water beyond the pier goes all the way to the horizon, causing Tilly to exclaim,
"That must be the biggest lake in the world."